Built a six-figure business in 7 months. We now have an entire solution to help anybody create a freedom-based business. She actually wrote in there, Lewis will kill someone one day. And she sent me for a psychiatric assessment.
I'm Lewis Raymond Taylor, and I'm going to show you how to build a coaching business from scratch.
The dickhead, basically.
Yeah.
That's me. Before I'd realised, I'd actually picked the knife up and I'd actually cut both sides of my neck. You know, I've had my jaw broken, I've had my teeth knocked out, I've been slashed in the back with a knife. I swung a punch, hit, and I thought, oh, I've killed him. But anyway, I was looking at 8 years in prison minimum. My lawyer told me.
What was the turning point from that very low?
I got addicted to personal development. I got addicted to growing myself, and I started in prison. And it was at that moment where I realised I was not at the end of my journey, I was at the beginning of it.
Hello, Lewis. Welcome to Rebels. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm a little bit stressed after arriving here a few minutes late, having to get the train up here and pick up a replacement phone and do a million things before going on a camper van tour up. Picking up a camper van today.
Yeah.
And then going on a trip for 2 weeks up in Scotland and Wales and bringing my wife. But I'm glad I'm settled here, grounded, ready to deliver some value and feeling a little bit more chilled now I've actually arrived.
Good stuff. I obviously looked at your socials and read into your story. And when I was thinking about the podcast and it was called Rebels, I was like, what kind of guest do I want on? And then I found you and modelled every other type of guest based on your level of
rebellion.
Yeah. So thanks for that. You made my job a lot easier. But before we get into the crux of that, let's rewind a little bit. Mm-hmm. What was it like growing up?
Yeah, so I had a bit of a emotionally detached mum. So she wasn't really the type of mum to cuddle and tell me she loved me and ask me how I was. She was just more of she practically provided for me and showed love in that way, but not in a way that I understood. My dad was an alcoholic and he would put me down a lot, call me a buffoon, call me stupid, tell me I never amount to anything, hit me. On the surface, things looked okay, but it was obviously creating turmoil for me. I used to run to my bedroom and punch myself in the head because I thought that I was a problem, and I was this bad kid. And quote unquote, became naughty, the naughty kid. And then that turned into the bad kid. And things progressed quite quickly to the point where I had an ASBO at 14. Was getting arrested at 14 as well. Little things like lighting fires and smashing windows and just sort of petty crime, looking for that attention. Yeah. 15 expelled from school. And 18, I was in a young offenders institution. So, up until that point, things were starting to get pretty bad, but unfortunately, it did actually get worse.
Yeah, before we get into that, how things got worse, we talked about obviously difficult childhood, and if you look at your life now and look at the things that you've done pre-business, what would you put it down to? Was it the kind of attention aspect? Was it the parenting?
So because my parents didn't show me love in the way that I received love, I didn't feel it. And because of that, I got confused and kind of looked outwardly for significance because that was the closest thing that I could associate to love, I think. I don't think any young child can kind of cognitively understand their needs and wants and desires, but I kind of just knew that I needed attention and significance and someone to kind of give me something that I knew I didn't have. Yeah. And I started to get that in a small way from, the attention of the crime. But that's what it was. It was just looking to be loved and getting confused in that. And then the labels and the being the naughty and being the bad kid just sort of creates this perpetual cycle of I'm bad, so I'll do bad things. And, because I'm doing bad things, I'm bad. And then I'm going to do more bad things. And but if I was given a little bit more love and a little bit more support and emotional nurturing, I think it very well could have been avoided.
Mm-hmm. You kind of went through a lot of things that happened and quite quickly, as almost just like reeling them off. And I think to the average person that'd be very, very significant. Right, it's almost like for you, this happened, and you've almost like compartmentalized it. Yeah. Around kind of teenage years, is that when it really developed?
Well, another thing happened as well. I mean, I didn't know how deep you wanted this sort of intro to go into, but when I was so I was naughty up until the age of about 8 or 9. I was still naughty, but I somehow, and I don't even remember how I came up with this epiphany, but I wanted to be famous.
Okay.
Yeah, and I never really said I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be a singer, I wanted to be a dancer, but I just wanted to be famous. And it hooks in to the significance piece. It's like, I'm not getting this love at home, so if I'm on stage and everyone, you know, maybe I'll get that. So cognitively I can see the patterns now. At the time I didn't understand. But so I got into acting. Like I said, I was practically provided for, so my mum did put me through like weekend acting classes and singing and dancing. I did all sorts of stuff. I was in plays. But then when I was 10 years old, I was sexually abused by one of the people at this Stagecoach, or I shouldn't have said the name, I guess, but it was called Stagecoach many years ago now, obviously. And that was when I was just sort of moving into secondary school. So I was like, all right, that doesn't work. I'm going to leave that one behind. And I just left all acting, singing and dancing behind after that, kind of buried it. And then resorted back to the naughty behaviour, and that's when it sort of really escalated, and I started to just commit crimes for the sake of it. Like I used to steal the bus hammer from the back of the bus. It's got a little diamond tip on the top of it, and you can smash windows at a flick of a wrist. Okay. And I would just sometimes walk miles, just smashing every bus stop window on my way. Just, I don't know, waiting for some reaction.
Was that anger? Do you think that was frustration? Do you think it was attention seeking?
It was attention seeking, yeah. Even negative attention is attention, you know. And I wanted to be seen, wanted to be heard, wanted to be loved, wanted to be appreciated. And in some warped way, that was the only way I could find to get it. And I didn't understand that at the time, but looking back and then I was like, oh, okay, actually that happened, and then this happened, then I started doing that, and it kind of makes complete sense. But like I said, I was acting on autopilot at the time, and just, you know, irrationally acting on those impulses that led me to some pretty dark places.
How did that scale into, how did that escalate?
Well, at 18 years old, I got my first girlfriend, and for the first time, this kind of void that I felt, this internal void of not being loved and not being lovable, not just not being loved, but feeling unlovable because I was a bad person. This first girlfriend kind of filled that void for me, and I felt loved. And she'd invite me around to her house, and her parents would cook me dinner. We'd watch TV as a family, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't even realize families were like this, you know, because we didn't do that at home. And I got really drunk one night, and I started arguing with her, and she turned around and said, well, you know what? I cheated on you. And like in a flash, I've never had a moment where in like a millisecond, I felt immediate loss because I knew she was gone. Because you can't get back with someone after that, you know. It's like I knew she was gone, and I knew she didn't love me because she wouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
I felt immediate confirmation of the fact that I was bad and unlovable. So I was like, I knew it, you know. And I also, for some reason, for the first time, felt the rejection from my family because they've treated me in this certain way. And at one point, because my behaviour got so bad, they ring-fenced me, in their own words, from the family to stop me from getting my brother, who's 5 years younger than me, into trouble, because I was actually at this point selling drugs, and I was getting my little brother to sell drugs for me, and I had a line and I would give him the line.
How old were you at this point?
18, 19, yeah. And I was getting into trouble. He was taking, you know, smoking weed, and I did take him down the wrong path, but that was because the only path I knew, so it was normal. I didn't really see anything wrong with it. Kind of made sense. I thought I was doing him a favour in some weird way. But so anyway, I felt all the loss of my family. I felt the loss of her, and I saw red, and I started smashing up her kitchen. And at one point, I pulled a drawer just clean out, and it fell on the floor. And I just looked down, and there's a 6-inch kitchen knife, and I just went, and then before I'd realised, I'd actually picked the knife up, and I'd actually cut both sides of my neck. And you can actually know how good the quality of these cameras are, but there are still scars here 10 years later.
Wow.
And they started spurting, like I clipped an artery and spurting with blood. Paramedics arrived. I tried to fight the paramedics. Like I was just crazy. Shouting, let me die and all this sort of stuff. And then they arrested me, pinned me down, stitched me up with actual stitches, no butterfly stuff, like actual stitches. Put a cannula in my arm, put a hospital gown on me because I was covered in blood and everything. And I ripped all the cannulas out and I ran up to my ex's house. Well, actually at the time, I guess my girlfriend's house.
Yeah.
Rung her doorbell and she just answered the door and I had nothing to say and I just stared at her blankly. She must have been the most scariest thing she's ever seen. Like, I'm in a hospital gown. I've got literally stitches that are like bulbous because they're being stitched, you know,
Yeah.
and like black stitches, and I'm like looking like Frankenstein, like just. And then I got arrested under the Mental Health Act. So, but the craziest thing about this, right, is they took me to St Albans Albany Lodge, which is a mental health hospital, and they literally put me in a padded room, as cliche as it is, because I was going crazy. Like, I was inconsolable. What's the word? Inconsolable? Is that right? Inconsolable.
That's the one.
Yeah. Didn't really finish education, as I told you earlier. Got expelled. But I was inconsolable, and I was just going crazy. So they put me in this padded room, and I fell asleep eventually. And then I woke up in the morning, and they went, right, so who have you got to pick you up?
Wow.
I was like, my mum. And then my mum picked me up. She drove me home. She didn't say a word.
It was literally just like that.
So the mental health people just let me go. And I should imagine they put it down to teenager got drunk, split up with his girlfriend again, even though far more going on than that. And my mum didn't say a word because she just didn't know how to process it. You know, she doesn't know how to deal with any conversation of feelings, let alone, so I don't blame her for that, but she just didn't know how to handle it, so she didn't. And later on, I'd been diagnosed with 3 different mental health diagnoses. So when I was 18, so after this point, I went off the rails. Okay. And you know, when I mentioned that I sort of wanted to be loved, and I found this sort of need of significance that was the closest I could find to it. And I tried to get that through acting, didn't get it. Got it through sort of criminality in a way, but it wasn't quite enough. And up until this point, because my dad used to hit me a little bit and I never used to be able to fight back, because I'd go into freeze mode, you know, fight, flight or freeze, or fawn apparently is a new one. But anyway, I froze and I used to just let my dad beat me up. Same with the sexual abuse, just let that happen, frozen. And weirdly, up until 17 years old, I used to be Larry. We used to have a little gang. We used to get into fights, but I used to just let them beat me up. They'd kick my head in a couple of times. I'd stand back up and laugh and walk off. But 18 years old, I was in a nightclub and I saw one of the guys that had hit me with his group of pals about 6 months before, or a few months before. Can't remember exactly, but I saw him. And I went up to him and I didn't have any conscious thought to do this. Right. But my arm just came in the air and punched him in the face. Like, I didn't plan it whatsoever, but I just saw him and just punched him in the face. And we got into a fight and I won the fight and the bouncers kicked me out. And I tell you what, I've never felt so powerful in my life. Like, I just got given this, I just felt like a Superman. And that significance that I've been looking for just got times by 100 because I realized I could fight. You know, I was like, oh, I can actually fight. Wow. And also then I started having a few other fights. And then I started getting people talking about me, like, did you hear about the fight that Lewis had last night? Did you hear about him punching the bouncer? Did you hear him, hit the guy with a bottle? Did you hear it? And I was just like, I loved it. It consumed me. It gave me everything I thought I needed. Like that notorious sort of element.
Notoriety.
Yeah, it gave me that, and I wanted that identity and reputation because it's all I had. Without that, I was nothing. So I just fed into it. Yeah. And that just led to years of drugs, fighting, and crazy things. Going to prison multiple times and lots of fights. Sometimes having like 2-3 fights in a night. I was looking for fights. Like, I admit it. The guy that's in the nightclub, he's frowning at people, looking to pick fights. The dickhead, basically. Yeah, that's me. That was definitely me. Like, me and my mate would be like, right, let's have a fight now.
So you'd actively go out with that intention?
Go out with that intention, yeah. Not necessarily at the beginning, but at some point it's like, right, now let's... And then we see one little opportunity for it, and we was in. Yeah. And also I had like a death wish as well. Because I was like hurting inside really what was going on, and I was sort of masking that with anger. Very angry at myself and I guess the world. But I also had a bit of a death wish in a way, So I would do crazy things, not you know, I'm not saying it now to act like I was this big tough guy. I'm saying it now to sort of explain the extremity of sort of how easy, you know, it could have been. I could have lost my life because I'd jump in a group of like 6 guys, just let them kick my head in. You know, I've had my jaw broken, I've had my teeth knocked out, I've been slashed in the back with a knife. I'd fight bouncers, just looking to get beaten up. It was almost like I want to get beaten up.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to necessarily lose, but I'd go back until I lost, you know. Sometimes even I'd go out to the nightclubs and I'd get all my clothes ripped off me, and I would actually pay a homeless person money to give me their clothes so I could put their clothes back on and then get back in the queue to go back in and fight again.
Wow.
It was an obsession.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a full alcoholic drug addict as well. So I was starting, you know, just drinking at nightclubs, and then it ended up back at, you know, flats for 3 days straight, and the cocaine became a few grams, and then it became 3-4 days without eating or sleeping, and it became less I'm this lad that's a bit cheeky down the club who gets into a fight, and more into this is a violent criminal who, you know, is doing drug sessions and you know, having to sneakily open the door to pick up more drugs at 8 in the morning or whatever, and it was getting bad.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by Fabric, a marketing training academy that runs a world-leading master strategy program for marketers looking to excel in their careers. The program teaches you frameworks that have been used by global brands and coaches you how to build a live marketing strategy in just 12 weeks. Now, I personally know many people who have completed Fabric's program and who have benefited directly, from getting promotions and accessing dream job roles to accessing increased marketing budgets and gaining the confidence to excel in their careers. Fabric is kindly offering listeners of this podcast 10% off their program so you can secure your place on it. For more information, check out the link in the bio. Use code REBELS10 in all capitals to claim the offer. You mentioned prison.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the story around that, and what was that kind of trigger that?
Yeah, so the first time I went to prison I was 18, and I stole a VAT. So I found a pair of car keys on the floor, pressed the button, and it, beep, beep, a van just flashed.
Right.
And in my brain, for some reason, all right, and I just put it in my pocket. I just wasn't thinking straight. And then just went to the pub at 18, got drunk. My friends went to this girl's house we knew. I couldn't fit in. I was like, I remember. I got these keys to take the van. Didn't even know how to drive. No, I'd never driven before. And started driving, and police obviously, well, it turned out that was the car keys were stolen in the burglary, but I didn't know that. So the car flashed on the registration plate, and I just put my foot down and just went. Didn't even know how to change gear. I think I was in second gear. The car was like, but I just went for it and just started going over parks and just crashed it into 2 cars. In the end, jumped out, ran.
Like proper GTA style.
Yeah. And then eventually I tried to jump over a wall, or no, a fence. And I thought, if I can get over this, because this guy was fat behind me, but I was unfit.
That
even though I was skinny. Yeah. But he threw his baton at me. But I was skinny, but I was unfit because I was obviously a drug addict. So he was fat, but he was kind of chasing up for me. But I see the fence, and I thought, if I can climb this fence, I'm gonna get away. And I jumped up at the fence, and I'd missed, and I just slid down to the bottom, and he got me. And I got sentenced to just 3 months in a young offenders institution. But that was the worst time in prison that I've had, because it was just full of young gangs. They sent me to Woodhill, double A cat. They've got people in there for 30 years for murder that are 18 years old, and it's everyone wants to prove themselves. Everyone's a part of a gang. Everyone wants a more serious sentence. Everyone thinks that's their life,
Yeah. What did that feel like day to day? Can you recall?
Yeah, I mean, part of me there was a part of me that kind of found it exciting, because it was in my life. It's like I've been promoted.
Okay, wow. Yeah.
I can't wait to think what people are going to say. Lewis has been in prison. That's half of that was in my head. The other half was obviously a little bit of how am I going to navigate this? This is a whole new world. First time they put me in the cell. Double cell, and they went, "Oh, Clark, he's not going to be happy. He's just been sent down the block. He's not going to be happy when he gets back to find out you've got his old bed." I was thinking, fuck's sake. And yeah, there were fights in there. You have to, because if you don't fight back, then you're a target and you're vulnerable. So it's like you've got no chance. You either fight or you're going to get jumped. So you have to find that balance of picking the fights strategic. It's like a game of chess. It's like I'll have that fight, but I'll avoid that one. I'll have everyone see me having that fight, so those guys see it, so that they don't try anything.
Yeah.
The first one was a guy tried to I was standing up on the wings, which are like, I guess it's like different floors.
Yeah.
And the guy granddaddied me. I don't know if you know that expression. It's when you kick someone's back of their leg with your knee and you sort of fall a little bit. And it was his way of sort of trying to make a joke out of me. So I just kicked him down the stairs and he just bounced. That was the first few days I was in. And then that, it gave me a little... But then they shipped me off to a different jail and then I had to do it all over again, They'd ship you about 3 free prisons during those 3 months. Yeah, that wasn't so great. The older prisons I went to when I was 24 are much better than that because they're all 21s and above. Mm-hmm. Those people typically want to get their head down. They categorize you as well. So you're around people that are doing... Some people are doing life, but typically it's not like a life as jail or someone that's on remand who could be getting, 60 years or something. Yeah, so it was an interesting period.
How do you... Obviously, we'll come to the transformation and where you are now.
Yeah.
What was the turning point from that very low? Yeah.
So there was a lot that happened in between there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I walked in and found my dad dead once.
How old were you then?
21. Was in prison 3 times, 3 different mental health diagnoses. Mm-hmm. The first one was due to... Because at one point I was on trial for 2 GBH, 3 ABH and a Frey. And they told me I was looking at 8 years minimum. Mm-hmm. They also told me I was looking at an IPP, which is an indefinite public protection order, which is the same thing that Charles Bronson has, which he's been in there for 40 years. Yes. My probation officer actually recommended that I get that. And that's because she thought, and she actually wrote in there, Lewis will kill someone one day. And she sent me for a psychiatric assessment and they diagnosed me with an antisocial personality disorder. I Googled it and it told me I was a psychopath. That's what it is. It's a psychopath. So I was like, okay, more information that I'm bad. But then over the years, I'd also got diagnosed with bipolar type 2, prescribed antipsychotic medication for it. And then emotionally unstable personality disorder inside prison by another psychiatrist.
Did that in any way affect kind of how you saw yourself, or how, like, did that help in any way to put almost an explanation for some of your behaviours, or was it something you kind of was presented with and were like, okay, cool, and it didn't really have an impact?
Half of me thought, well, yeah, I know there's something wrong with me because I've always known I'm bad. Yeah. But half of me sort of thought the labels are a load of bullshit. Mm-hmm. So I didn't necessarily... I sort of thought, yeah, makes sense. But I'm not... I've got 3 diagnoses from 3 different people, so 2 of you are wrong, at least. So... didn't really put too much weight on it, but was like, oh, fair enough. But anyway, I was looking at 8 years in prison minimum. My lawyer told me. And... they sent me for this psychiatric assessment, and that's why, because I didn't care, actually. Right. That was because they said, you're looking at 8 years in prison, spoke to the probation officer. Usually when you go for your pre-sentence report, that's your opportunity to go to probation and basically act like you're going to be rehabilitated so that they can write a lovely, piece to the judge to recommend sentencing. But people were on their best behaviour in there, but I just couldn't give a shit. Yeah. I was probably turn up late. I was like, what do you want? You're looking at 8 years, and I was like, so.
Throughout this time, did you have any kind of long-term ambition or aspiration? Or where did you see your life heading? Could you think that far ahead, or were you just kind of day to day?
Day to day, yeah. I didn't have any comprehension of consequences, right, and long-term impact. When you think about, if I have a criminal record, this is going to happen, or it just. And that maybe comes with maybe some of these diagnoses that I still to this day don't know if I have had them, have still got them, or but just I know at that point in my life, I had no empathy, I had no sympathy, I had no remorse, I had no idea of consequences of my actions, and I didn't really give a shit. Yeah. And it got to the age of 24, and I'd been out taking loads of cocaine and drinking and everything. It was about 4 a.m. I was outside a taxi queue. Didn't realise it was a taxi queue. Walked straight to the front. Everyone had been queuing up. I just opened the door. Whether or not I knew or not, I can't remember. Whether or not I thought I was better than everybody and I can just walk to the front, or whether or not I actually just didn't know it was there, I don't know. But I opened the door and turned around, and some guy was, shouting in my face and calling me like, all these names and stuff for like jumping the queue. And this isn't a justification for what I did after this, and I take full responsibility for it, but it gives a little bit of understanding as to why. But when I think back to that memory in that taxi queue, I can just see my dad's face shouting at me. I don't even know what this guy looked like. All I can remember is my dad. So I know that I was triggered then. Doesn't make it any better. Doesn't make it any, justification as to why somebody would aggressively behave in the way that I was about to. But it might help people understand that you can be triggered, based on traumas and all sorts of things. But anyway, I swung a punch, missed, that drunk. Swung a second punch, hit, and he went to the ground with a thud, made everyone turn around. And I looked over him, went up to him, told him to get up. He wouldn't. I was probably about to kick him in the head. And then I looked over and I just saw this slow, dark trickle of blood come out of his head. And I thought, I've killed him. It was exactly like you see in a film. When someone gets shot and then you look and then the blood comes out. It was exactly like that, but from his head. And he went down with such force onto his face, face down. I thought, that's not someone that's alive. And I looked into the corner of my eyes and I saw the camera. I saw the CCTV camera. I thought, I'd love to tell you my first thought was the person in front of me, but it was, I fucked my life up. I'm going to jail for life. Took my barber jacket off, placed it over him, put my hands up, waited for the police to arrive because I knew that I was banged to rights. They locked me in the back of the car. Everyone started making a big commotion. There was police arrived. There was ambulance and everything. Left me in the back of the car. And then when they finally got back in, it seemed like ages later, I asked if he was dead. They wouldn't tell me. They arrested me, put me in the back, put me in the cells. I asked if he's dead. They wouldn't tell me. They interviewed me. I asked if he's dead. They wouldn't tell me.
Why were you asking so much? Did the guilt start creeping in at that point?
No, just a fear of consequences, I guess, at that point. Wow. Am I going to spend life in jail now? Have I actually pushed it too far? I've got to be honest. There's no point in lying. At that time, I didn't understand emotions at all. Whether or not I was actually a sociopath is a question. I don't know. Or whether or not I'd suppressed my emotions from a young age so much. I don't know, because of all the trauma, the sexual abuse, the violence. Or whether or not I'd never actually developed any sort of emotional intelligence through nurturing and learning, because you have to be displayed emotions and feel them and understand them in order to have them, So I'm not sure, but I can tell you that I didn't really care about those things, which is why I was doing them. Wouldn't have done them if I did. And it turned out he didn't die, and he was in a coma for 3 days. He had a brain hemorrhage, and I would have got 3 years, but they said because you pleaded guilty at the scene in the UK, they do a third off if you plead guilty to avoid having to go to trial, and they gave me 50% off for pleading guilty at the scene, which was actually very generous of them. And I got sentenced to 18 months for GBH, grievous bodily harm. And that wasn't actually the turning point. So about a day in, a day or two in, I rang up my friend from the payphone that they have in there. You get credits and you can call on the phone. I said, what are people saying about me, on social media? Because again, I was kind of partly wanting to know.
Almost like a dopamine hit.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's Instagram likes. Before then it was like, am I in the paper for beating someone up? I don't know. And yeah, they told me I was on the front page of the paper. Boorish and violent, and thug is sentenced for jail for Q rage, and called me troubled, and said that I had 19 convictions, and I did at that point. I had 19 offences with 10 convictions, so multiple offences per conviction, and I didn't really care about that. And then he said, but there is a picture of you that your friend posted of you. One picture was the day you were sentenced to prison outside the courtroom.
Right.
And another picture of you outside the exact same courtroom 7 years before with the caption above, nothing changes. And that clicked because I thought, you cheeky bastards. Like, because this was like one of my best mates and he was like not far off as bad as I was.
Right.
And he's telling me nothing changes. But so first of all, I was a bit defensive. And then I was like, but he's right.
Yeah.
So nothing has changed in those 7 years. And you know, as obvious as it sounds, for that was the first time that I realised that if I wanted my life to change, I had to change myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never really thought about that before. I was blaming everything and everyone around me for why my life was so difficult and kind of thought I had no chance. But for some reason I got it in that moment and took responsibility, you know, and had this sort of like just immediate inner shift, realised I was the problem, and realised, you know, that I was also the solution. And, you know, I've always been an addict. So I've been addicted to everything you can imagine, from sex, drugs, gambling, everything, like cigarettes. Can't even remember off the top of my head, but if you give me a list, I think I've ticked them all off. Even now to this day, you know, like business and stuff, even constructive ones I seem to tick off. But I got addicted to personal development. I got addicted to growing myself, and I started in prison. So I started to go to maths and English. They had maths and English department. They had a RAPT program, which is a rehabilitation of addicted prisoners trust. I started to go to psychotherapy, went to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I started to read. I started to, you know, get into a bit of a routine, and I just started to notice small changes, and those small changes just started to build up to the point where I realized, oh, I could actually change, you know, this is possible. I can see it now. Because in those rehabilitation of addicted prisoners trust, it was like a 6-week rehab inside prison.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty intensive. It was like every day for 6 weeks, and they were teaching us stuff. And at the beginning, it was absolutely bare basic. Like, they would sit us in a circle and ask each one of us how we felt. And each one of us would all say, I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm all right. And then every now and again, someone might say, I'm hungry. And then it would go back to, I'm all right. And we didn't understand how we felt. So they'd pass us like a sheet of paper with a list of emotions on there.
To pick one.
Yeah. It's like, oh, actually, I'm a bit frustrated today.
Okay.
You know? So that's how it started. But I remember listening to these workshops and learning little bits and actually going, wow, that could work, and I can apply that, and now I'm seeing benefits from it. And then from there, it was kind of, I speak about it now, it's actually called the belief cycle.
Right.
So you take action,
Uh-huh.
and it gives you a certain element of result.
Mm-hmm.
And that result actually increases the amount of potential that you feel like you have,
Yeah.
which motivates you to take more action. And from that action, you then get more results, which increases the amount of potential you feel like you
a
have.
feedback loop.
Yeah, and then it just starts exactly. And I always used to speak about my life spiraling out of control, and it did. You know, it just went out. Next thing you know, back in jail, back in the cells. You know, and things have spiraled out of control again. But then, you know, my life spiraled into control, which is not something you hear so often.
No.
But it did. You know, I took the right steps, did the right thing, and just went for it, you know. And when I was up for release from prison, one of the people that came into this RAPT program was a rehab center, and they said there's an opportunity to do a 6 months rehab where you can, you know, get rid of your addiction and all this sort of stuff. First I thought, oh God, I've done enough time. I felt like I can just go home now. Yeah. But then I was doing a maths and English test to get some functional skills 1 and 2, which is like the equivalent of a 10-year-old. Yeah. And I punched a wall. I thought, why did I do that? I was scared at the test, because I realised that I was still scared of, you know, proving my dad right and everyone knowing that I'm a buffoon and all this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And they took me to the hospital because they thought I'd like broken my hand because my hand was swelled up, and they don't actually have in-care hospitals at the prison I was at the time. So they took me to a hospital in handcuffs with other officers, and I drove past where I was from because I was literally about 10 minutes away from where I lived, you know, because they moved me to a prison right near my, like where I grew up. And I just felt everything come back like that. As soon as I saw just one pub or one shop, it was just like, this life. Yeah, I remember this. You know, and all those changes that I felt were concrete had just gone. And it was at that moment where I realised I was not at the end of my journey. I was at the beginning of it. And I applied for that rehab that they spoke about. And you had to go through a process and apply for it and be interviewed for it. And there's only a few places because it was 20 grand. But they paid for it. It was like a grant or something or other. And I thought, they're not going to accept me because I'm not that bad. And, you know, you've got to be really bad to basically get it. Okay. Because they're trying to prevent people from going out there and causing even more havoc. Yeah. And I got it. So they literally picked me up from the prison gates and escorted me straight to Portsmouth when I was from just outside of London. And they set me by the coast and went through the most intensive 6 months of my life, worse than prison, because I thought they were going to teach me how to not drink and not take drugs. But they didn't even mention that. They taught me about myself. They broke me down. And they rebuilt me. Got me to speak about everything that ever happened and my feelings and emotions and, you know, broke me down. At one point I literally cried, you know. Speaking about my dad, I was choking up and I was like, don't. She's like, it's okay, you can trust me. I was like, oh, don't. And then it just erupted. I was like, why was he so horrible to me? It just came out of my mouth. I didn't even want to say that, but it just somehow came out. Why was he so horrible to me? You know, why did you do this? And then I kind of realized I've been holding on a lot of guilt and shame to myself, you know, because I didn't understand why I was being treated like that. I thought it was my fault. And when I left that rehab, my head was just clear. It was empty. You know, it's all, you know, I still had work to do, but it felt so packed before. Even at the beginning of that wrapped program I did, I remember the first question I asked was, Miss, what do you do if you've got loads of problems but you don't know what they are? I knew that there was some issues in there, but I didn't know how to sort of get to understand them. And I left rehab, and that started. That was a transformation stage, and then I moved into helping other people.
So, I mean, looking back now at that stage of your life compared to today, what does today look like for you?
Wow, so I travel the world. Just been married to a very beautiful Venezuelan woman who lives. She lived in Miami. We actually met when I was speaking at an event in Barcelona, and she was from Miami, I was from England, but we met and I was like, stay with me, let's travel the world together. And she did. And then 3 years to the day we went back to Barcelona and got married there. I got a business that has 7,000 customers from 81 countries around the world, called the Coaching Masters.
That was recently valued at
$25 million, Wow. And actually that was a year ago. So I've already been told, with the new direction we're taking with a few things and the growth we've had since, it's considerably more already. I've just done a TEDx talk. I recently had a book publishing deal, can't name the name, but it's with
a big publisher.
Big one. Very, 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 very big one. I got a couple of documentaries coming out, one on Channel 4, online Channel 4. Kids and Criminals, so little kids have interviewed me. And then also I've actually recorded my own documentary in negotiations with some broadcasting people about that.
Yeah, that's obviously amazing. How did we get to this point?
Yeah.
So the business especially, I guess that was probably the biggest thing that changed your life. How did you build a business from nothing to a valuation of 25?
Yeah, and it was literally nothing because I was on benefits. So when I came out of rehab, I applied for housing benefit and employment support allowance, ESA, and I literally had a bicycle, and I literally used to cycle to the laundrette with my laundry between the handlebars. You know, I didn't have a washing machine or anything. So it was humble beginnings, as you can imagine, and the only place that I could afford that was on my own, because I wanted to live on my own, didn't really want to live with anybody else, was in this place where there was literally heroin addicts on the staircase that I had to step over to get to my door. So it wasn't great when I started, but it was a fresh start. I just realized that I'd learned so much in my journey of changing my life, changing the way that I saw the world and myself. And I'd also realized that I'd been through rehab and I used to go to AA meetings and NA meetings, which is Narcotic Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd seen people's relapses and their breakthroughs and their denials and their stories. And I'd heard it all so many times, hundreds of times. And I started to notice the similarities.
Yeah.
And I put the pieces together with my journey and theirs. And I just realized that I'd formed this like solid foundation of how people think and how they work. And I saw so many people online that were miserable and moaning. And my business started by literally reaching out to them and offering them to come to Costa Coffee for a coffee to talk. Because I thought, I know I can help these people, help them for free. And they really enjoyed it. And I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll meet you for 6 weeks then, completely free. Didn't even know what coaching was. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, I'd completely changed. There was 6 of them in the end. And at the end of the 6 weeks, all 6 of them had completely changed their lives in some aspect or another. Like I helped one woman split up with like a relationship that was toxic, one woman with an eating disorder, one woman start like a pet business that she wanted to start. All these at the moment now feel little things, but at the time felt huge. I was like, oh my God, how have I been able to help these people? Started doing some research and then realized that I could become a coach. Did a little bit of online education. And then I did an access course in college, and because I wanted to go to uni, I thought that's my path. You know, I've got to go to uni. Did an access course in college. Bearing in mind I'd got expelled from school, didn't know how to do anything, like never done any homework, was well out of my depth doing this access course because it's the equivalent of your A-levels. And I actually left with the top marks in the entire college. I got a distinction in every module and every subject and won an award, which like really pumped me up. Anyway, but there was this 3-month gap because it was this feedback loop, like you mentioned, right? I'm just getting fueled with a different type of significance now. It's like, oh, I'm getting recognized for being smart. This is way better than beating someone up. But I had a 3-month gap between college and uni, and I went traveling around Thailand. It was a goal of mine to do traveling, and I spent 3 months, but I did my clients online via Facebook video, and I'd started to get some clients using social media, and this was 7 years ago now when people weren't doing that. And I literally had 50-year-old women, female coaches kind of going, I've been in it for 30 years, Lewis. What on earth are you doing? Because I was this 25, 26-year-old guy, clean shaven, looked about 19, with all these clients and like traveling the world. And I would, post a picture of me in my laptop. This is like obviously done to death now, but before it was very new on the scene. And they started asking me how I was getting clients. And I started saying, well, you just do this, this, and this. And they was like, oh my God, I've never thought of that.
What is this, and this?
Well, simple things like posting on social media and sharing your story and connecting with people and, offering value and getting people on discovery calls and coaching them, and then at the end telling them about how you can help them. It's just simple stuff, but they're
building your personal brand.
But they're sitting there just in networking meetings giving out business cards to 6 people drinking a coffee. Never going to work, but they didn't know any other way because they haven't been brought up in that world. But I built a 6-figure business in 7 months, so that was pretty cool. And then that moved to about 2,500 over the next year. 250,000 when I started moving into more business coaching, helping other coaches with the strategy to get the clients.
I see. So you were helping individuals, and then you thought, okay, I can help the entire industry.
Yeah, because they came to me. So I was like, if someone's coming to you, then if they keep on knocking, you got to answer it.
Was it just you at this point?
Yeah.
How did you then scale that? So you can only do so much, right?
Well, exactly. And so at this point, over the 2-year period, the industry was developing and changing. The internet was becoming more used, and people had sort of latched onto these online sort of strategies. So I started to find some competitors like me. It's like, oh, there's other people teaching coaches how to get clients, and I'd also help them how to build a website and how to do their branding and all that sort of stuff as well. And there was these other marketing agencies that had come about from like back in the Ty Lopez days, I don't know if you remember that. But anyway, so there was other competitors, and I was like, I don't like this. I was like, I don't want to compete for people's business, So I thought, I need to get these coaches before they know they're a coach, because if they've got coach on their then everyone's going to jump on them. So I need them before that stage. So I need to help them become a coach. And then I met my business partner, Liam James Collins, and he was training coaches, but he was doing it offline. So he was getting people to come to like a seminar, and he would like literally pitch them in the middle of the room, and then they'd run back to the back of the room and start signing up for his like NLP training courses. Met up with him for a coffee because he was my age, tattooed as well, young. I was just like, wow, I didn't know there was another one of me that existed, because all the other coaches were like middle-aged women at this point. There's a whole new age breed of coach, and I think like our company are a big part of why that happened. But we talk about creating this new age breed of coach, younger, sharper, more powerful, more impactful, and living this freedom-based lifestyle, traveling Bali. But 5-6 years ago, they were literally all in local networking meetings and literally delivering their coaching sessions in chaise longue chairs in offices that they rented out. And I met Liam, and it was just an identical version of me, and it kind of just clicked. You're qualifying coaches. I help people grow their coaching business or launch their coaching business.
Right.
We now have an entire solution to help anybody create a freedom-based business where they can be fulfilled by helping people, have the strategies to get clients, and work from wherever they want in the world. It's like we have what everyone wants between us. It's like, who doesn't want that? No one. So we, within one day, was like, we're merging our businesses, but we're not doing it offline anymore, Liam. We're putting this online. Our teacher, because I had that mind of how that would work. And we launched our first course, made 16 grand, reinvested it, made 400 grand in the first year, 1.6 million in the second year. It just grew and grew exponentially, hiring people, running more traffic, creating more products. We've got like a membership site, various courses. We've got a co-working space in Bali. We've got an app. We've got a virtual reality as well. On the Oculus headset, there's like a digital avatar version of me delivering the coaching. So it's just progressive. It's just evolved. If something it was the right time in the industry for a start. Coaching industry is the second fastest growing sector in the world. I was there at the right time.
Yeah.
And I delivered it in a way that people weren't delivering the training, because we deliver it from an experiential place. Most of the coaching training before was like just regurgitated books, and boring and sterile, and from people that didn't really know what it was like to go to those places, But we could because he had also been through significant trauma. He was in the London terror attacks. His dad committed suicide by stepping in front of a train. All that was left of him was his hand that he had to identify with. So we'd both been through this trauma, and we'd found a way out of it. So we were sharing things that were proven. It's like, there's a guy called Rich Litvin, The Prosperous Coach, great book for coaching. And he says, one quote is, you can only take someone to the depths that you've been yourself.
Wow, that's powerful.
And that's why me and Liam were able to create this first flagship course that was just pure magic. Like we cried in it. We shared our whole stories in there. Every single thing that we ever felt about ourselves, we shared how to break it down and how we built it back up, alongside all the traditional tools and techniques and models and frameworks within coaching, as well as some new ones that we adapted. So it was like a nice balance of strategy and also just very emotional driven. Yeah. And people loved it. So it was right place, right time, right product, right fit. And if you get that, then that's how you create like an exponential growth curve. And things went through the roof.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Now we've got like 100 staff and all over the world, all remote working. And I'm a full-time digital nomad, so I haven't lived in the UK for 4 years.
How's that been, the digital nomad thing? Because obviously now it's quite popular. And I myself, I'm doing that this summer.
Nice.
Any tips?
Mate, it's all I know, to be honest, because I never really had any stable place apart from that place in Portsmouth for a bit that wasn't great, and then I just started getting on the road, and sort of my whole team had been built out from one person, so I'd just use software to manage a team, so I wouldn't know how to manage someone in an office. That'd be confusing for me. I only know how to do it remotely. And it's amazing because you open your laptop and everything that you need is there, so it doesn't matter where you are as long as you've got Wi-Fi. And it's amazing. I lived in Bali for 3 years, I lived in Dubai for 6 months, I've traveled around Paris and all sorts of places. Like I said, I'm about to do 2 weeks in a camper van, and I'm in the middle of a new course launch, but I'll just lift up my laptop one night and deliver a live stream, and this is about it.
What advice would you give to somebody who's looking to start a business but kind of doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the qualifications, doesn't have a degree, doesn't have a business coach, or can't afford that? Where should somebody start?
Don't need all those things now. You know, with the modern day world, you have access to all the information you can ever want or need for free, really. The only ever time you would invest into a coach and course is when you're looking to like go all in and you've already made that decision. And that's when you're going to start to gain the experience and the confidence and everything that comes with it. But, you know, you can start on YouTube, you know, and learn more than you could in university. Just quickly stepping back to that, you know, I said I had 3-month gap between college and university. I went back from the traveling, started university, got 3 months in, and thought, I'm actually being taught by so I was studying business management and entrepreneurship. But I was 3 months in, and I was being taught by a guy that had never left university. He was an academic. He got his PhD in, I think, product design, and was now teaching, you know, a degree on entrepreneurship. Never had a business. And I was just like, what is the point in this? Right. So if you feel like you haven't got the qualifications, good. In my opinion, unless you're doing something very specific, like you're going to be a doctor, they're a waste of time anyway. Go out and decide what you want to do, and then find the education that you exactly need to get there. And you'll find the most parts, at the beginning parts, are free. You know, there's a book that you might want to buy for $9.99. There's, you know, YouTube videos that are free. There's podcasts that you can listen to for free. And just get started. Take that first step. You know, if you're worried about, you know, what can happen, you know, the only way you're going to find out is if you take that step. So take the step, start learning for free, and reinvest. That's all I did. You know, it's not like I started off with an ambition to make a $25 million business and had all the confidence in the world to do anything that I'm doing now, or had the money. I just started helping one person, then 2, then 3, then started charging for it, and used that money and invested into, I think my first investment was a virtual assistant in the Philippines. It's like, just get started. The quicker you can get started, and imperfectly as well. I always talk about take immediate imperfect action. Don't wait, because if you keep on waiting, it's never going to come. Do it imperfectly, because there's no such thing as perfection as perfect anyway. It's all an illusion. It's just going to hold you back. Do it imperfectly and improve along the way.
In your own journey, see, it sounds amazing and kind of exponential growth. Have there been any kind of obstacles, barriers that you've faced in the business sense, or do you think because of the way you've built the model, it's been quite smooth?
It's all been smooth, but there's been stresses. I mean, because if you want to grow fast, you've got to reinvest your money into growing it.
Yeah.
So the faster you want to grow, the less money you're going to have, and the tighter it's going to be to cover expenses.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to make a nice load of profit where you're safe and comfortable, you're going to grow less, because you're taking money that could be used on advertising budget or a new project or a new idea.
It's like taking the risk, isn't it?
You've got to keep on taking the risk. So every month, basically, it's like starting a new business again, you know, seeing if it works, because you've got this new angle, a new campaign, or a new strategy, or a new idea.
Yeah.
And sometimes doesn't always go to plan, and, you know, can be a bit tough. I remember I saw a quote, and it was like Elon Musk sold PayPal for like 600 million, and he put 300 million into SpaceX and 300 million into something else, and couldn't afford his rent. And that's kind of like the mindset you kind of not got to have, but can adopt if you want to grow really fast. So the only obstacle I would say is sometimes, you know, some things don't pay off, and, you know, you haven't given yourself much window to be able to turn that back around. So it could be quite stressful. It's like, right, we've got 2 weeks, it has to work now. Otherwise, cash flow situation can make you, you know, bankrupt. I'm sure there's something you could always do, even if we got to that point.
Yeah.
But we've definitely, you know, over the years been close to the line sometimes, where it's like, God, like, can we pull this one off? But then it just gives you that urge to make sure it does.
Would you say you're like now addicted to the business and to growth?
Yeah.
And you mentioned fitness earlier. Has that been kind of a big part of that journey as well? The self-improvement, kind of personal development?
Did I mention fitness? I don't remember mentioning fitness. Yeah, because it's not really. I've neglected my health quite a lot, to be honest. The business has taken control over that part.
Would you say you have to make sacrifices then, or what sacrifices have you made in building the business?
Yeah. I have made sacrifices with my health. I've burnt the candle at both ends. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. for a webinar because I was in Bali and the webinar was at 7 p.m. UK time. And I had to wake up at 3 a.m., drink a pre-workout shake that you would usually use in the gym to give you energy, just to get me awake. And then, and I felt superhuman for a few years, when I was in my late 20s, but moving into my early 30s, I noticed not much of a difference. But after 4 or 5 years of hard graft, 14-hour days, sometimes 7 days a week, that's the reality. Like, the only inauthentic thing I've done from time to time is I've painted myself to live quite a very quiet lifestyle business, when actually, in reality, it's more than I make out, but it's because I'm building an empire. So when I tell people you can build an online life coaching business and you can work a few hours of the week, that is true, but that's not what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm building an ed tech company. I'm looking for $1 billion valuation. So for that, I have to work way harder and way longer and put myself under way more stress. So, but if I was to reveal that, I think it would put a lot of people off. Mm-hmm. So in the earlier years, I've basically been like, you guys, you can work from your laptop and work just a couple hours a day. It's really chilled here. I'm in Bali with my coconut, but really, like, I'm like, put the coconut back for most of the day and I'm back on that laptop.
Mm-hmm. What are the long-term ambitions then?
So there's one big thing I can't reveal because it's like, it's not been released yet, but just evolution of what we're doing, bigger, outside of the coaching arena slightly. Coaching arena is actually, I used to think it was big because it was a $20 billion industry. Yeah. The bigger I grow, the more I realize that's not a big industry. So
you want bigger?
I want a bigger one. Yeah. So going after a $1.5 trillion one, if anyone can work out what that is. But yeah, I'll tell you. I won't tell you the specifics, but the plan is to move more into mainstream education. I don't think mainstream education is built correctly. That's why I left uni. That's probably why I got expelled from school. And they're teaching us algebra and photosynthesis when they could be teaching us about who we are and our emotional intelligence and mindset and the power of our own mind and who we are. Yeah. And we don't get taught that stuff, which is desperately needed. And I've looked at statistics, and the percentages of children that have anxiety and even self-harming is actually very high. And you think, why on earth are children in the UK self-harming? That's not right. That there's a big systemic problem there, and it's because our education system has been built from the Industrial Revolution, and it's been built around memorization of generic pathways that create workers, and AI has already replaced all of that. Like even in more recent months with Chat GPT, if you've been following that. I mean, now anyone that's memorized anything has just wasted their time. Yeah. But so the goal is to move into more mainstream education.
Nice. Where can people find you?
Luckily enough, I've got a unique name of Lewis Raymond Taylor, so if you type that in anywhere, I'll come up, even Google for the only one. So Google, Instagram, Facebook.
Dominated that SEO.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So Lewis Raymond Taylor, Instagram, my website, but business is, what I'm passionate about. So mainly I would like people to go check out thecoachingmasters.com. That's what I'm all about. It might not look like me, but I'm there.
You're there. You're doing stuff.
Yeah.
I always ask every guest that comes on this podcast a simple question at the end, which I'm going to ask you now. What is a strong opinion or belief that you have that potentially one day could get you cancelled?
And that's not a simple question.
It's not a simple question. That's why I tell you the question in advance.
You said it was simple there. So I speak to a lot of people, and there's a bit of a balance between therapy and counselling. So therapy is more historic, based on things that have happened to you, and coaching is more forward-looking towards where you want to be. And you do have to have qualifications to be a counsellor, and it's more regulated than coaching. So just putting that disclaimer out there. And I don't give sort of therapeutic advice. And in fact, I don't even coach anymore because obviously I'm a CEO of a company. But I don't necessarily believe in the stories of the victim a lot of the time. I think a lot of people sit in victim state where they are telling themselves the same story over and over again. And it's defining them to the point where it's only having a negative impact on themselves. So some people could have serious sexual assault happen to them, for example, right? And they'll live their whole life depressed because of it, and justifiably. And a lot of people will actually enable that by saying, yeah, you should feel like that, and keeping them in that space of pain. When actually, with as little as, can you tell me 100 things as to why that benefited you? And then writing that out, the story changes. They're no longer a victim. They're released from that pain. They go off and live an amazing life. But you got to be able to say, you're not a victim, or allow them to see that they're not a victim. And there'll be people with a very polarizing view of that, because they're like, how dare you, can you say that sexual assault is not a victim? Of course I was, and yeah, but it's an identity. And do you want to hold on to that identity, and is it serving you? So I'm not saying that something bad hasn't happened to you and you didn't deserve that to happen. However, I would say 10 years down the line, if you're still holding on to that story and it's not serving you, maybe drop that identity and fall out of victim state and become empowered and move forward with your life.
Thanks, Lewis. Thanks for being on the podcast.
No worries. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to Rebels podcast with me, Shoaib Ahmed. If you've been watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you've been listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, then please give us a 5-star rating and a follow. The more successful this podcast gets, the bigger and better guests we can have on in the future. Thank you.